Hello everyone, welcome to Driving in the Dark. Holy goddamn fucking shit, am I late on this? But I have been so goddamn crazy fucking sick for the last like 4 or 5 days. Like full blown flu, just. And plus allergies, just so goddamn fucking sick the last few days. I've tried to record stuff and I haven't been able to. And the good thing about that is that when you're really, 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 really goddamn fucking sick, you can catch up on stuff you missed on streaming. Like, I remember when I was a kid, when I was like, 8, 9, 10, I would get sick at school, have to call in and just sit at home at my daycare watching Judge Judy. And there's a certain special, transcendent kind of high when you're just so goddamn fucking sick and you're staring at a screen all day. There's just this it just melts your brain in this really special way. And I've had my brain melted in that special nostalgic way in the last few days. I binge watched the entirety of the Judd Apatow show Love a couple day or two ago. But today, specifically, I finally got around to watching the film Beasts of No Nation, which is notable because Idris Elba won the SAG Award for his performance in Beasts of No Nation last year, but he wasn't even nominated for an Oscar for his performance. And that was Idris Elba's exclusion was a large part of the discussion about race in the most recent Academy Awards. And for that reason, and also just because it seemed to be a good film, I felt obligated to watch Beasts of No Nation. And this is my review of it. And unfortunately, my review of this film is kind of mixed. I'll summarize the film briefly for any of you who may not have heard about it or seen it or anything. Beasts of No Nation is a Netflix original film available in selected cinemas about more or less child soldiers in Africa. The events in this film play out in an unspecified West African country, representing unspecified conflicts between different West African, leaders and governments and rebel groups. Ultimately, the core thing of this film is just simply about child soldiers and the constant instability on the African continent and the human toll that takes, irrespective of any specific country or group. We follow, in this film, we follow a young man, well, not even man, like a 6-year-old named Agu, who lives in an African village, and then the village is massacred, and his father and brother and his family are killed in front of his eyes. And then he narrowly escapes death himself and flees into the jungles, and is ultimately captured and then recruited by a band of rebels in the forest, and joins them and becomes a child soldier and learns how to kill, learns how to destroy, learns to shut off his empathy. And you know what? I'm gonna state this from the jump. There was a lot of controversy about how Idris Elba should have been nominated for Best Actor at the last Oscar Awards, but I'm gonna say this straight up, just for real. Abraham Atta, who plays Agu, even though, I don't know how old this guy is. He can't be older than like 13. He should have been nominated for an Oscar. Abraham's performance in Beasts of No Nation is absolutely goddamn fucking incredible. I'm always like most people, I'm always skeptical of child actors, but Abraham's performance in this is transcendently good. There is not a single moment, not a single second, not a single plot point where you even begin to doubt his performance. This is one of the and I did actually look it up. He is currently 14 years old. Abraham Ada. Oh my goodness. This is honestly one of the best performances I have seen from an actor in years. Not this year, not last year. In years, I have not seen a better performance than Abraham Ada. He is absolutely incredible, and I hope he goes on to become incredibly successful and well acclaimed and all that. But even over Idris Elba, Abraham Ada should have been nominated for his performance in this film, because really Elba was basically a supporting actor. But Abraham, oh my, I can't even begin to summarize how fucking good his performance in this is. He is totally committed. Totally 100 all the way. But, let's talk about the film a little bit. I've got to be honest, as a film overall, I was a little bit disappointed in Beasts of No Nation. And, I've been thinking about it all day, but it's kind of hard for me to process why. Maybe that's because I'm sick right now or whatever. But I think this is the classic example of a film where the totality of it is not greater than the sum of its parts. There are a lot of incredible and stylistically interesting and aesthetically perfect things that happen in this film, and I highly enjoyed watching it, but by the time I got to the end of the film, I felt like it didn't really add up to anything. I didn't feel like it's amounted to something profound or brilliant. I think part of the problem with that is that Beasts of No Nation is really, really, really committed to realism in a real way. It's not a film where someone gets shot and you see it in slow motion with a swelling orchestra and the choir playing in the background and people falling and everything is in slow-mo and it's CGI and all this shit. This is very realistic in the sense that someone gets shot, they fall over, and people move on. They don't stick around to watch them die. This is a film where violence is very real, but also very casual. And I can appreciate that realism, but honestly, I just feel like there was a sense of drama and a sense of emotional depth that was lacking from this film. Idris Elba himself, he gives a stellar performance in this film, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't even tell you some of the stuff his characters does. But this is, I think, in some moral, objective sense, this is the most horrible, awful, worst fucking character Idris Elba has ever played in his entire career, as far as I've seen. I'll sum it up like this. Idris Elba plays a child molester in this film. Alright? And he gives a great performance, and he fully commits. And as I previously stated, Abraham Ada fully commits as well. And there are a lot of interesting and extreme and brutal things that happen in this film, and everyone fully commits. Everyone does the best job they can. The director fully commits, and the director in this as well was the director of photography. He commits fully in both roles. This is not a film where anyone pulls away, or they pull their punches, or they softball it at all. But, you know, for some reason, this film just did not connect with me in the way I wanted it to. Unfortunately. Like, I really wanted to love this film. And I liked it while I was watching it, but when it was over, I was just like, that's not enough. It's just not enough. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe that's my fault because like a week or two ago, I finally got around to watching The Last King of Scotland, starring Forest Whitaker, about Idi Amin's downright fucking insane dictatorship and in Uganda. And I Whitaker's performance in The Last King of Scotland, he justly earned his Best Actor award at the Academy Awards. I have never in my entire life, with every historical figure I've been interested in, every historical figure I've seen portrayed on the screen, I have probably never in my life seen anyone more fully embody someone than I have seen Idi Amin embodied by Forest Whitaker. But, you know, I'm going off on a tangent, and I'm diverting. To return to Beasts of No Nation, I think as brutal and honest as this film is, I don't think there was a grander vision. I don't think it came together the way it should have. Even with Idris Elba's character, Commandant, as he's called throughout this film, like 30 minutes into the film, I was able to foresee what was going to happen like an hour later. And going through these plot points, nothing surprised me in this film, plot-wise. But, you know, most films, it's like that. You can guess what's going to happen. But I think my problem was Beasts of No Nation was so committed to realism in their depictions of violence, so committed to a sort of real-time humility, that if your plot is going to be that fucking predictable, you need to instill it with a sense of drama or tension, or even melodrama. But this film was so committed to being realistic that there just wasn't a point where it really, really, really connected with me. Like, there are some horrific things that happen in this film. As I mentioned, you know, the rape of a child. But, like, there's a scene in this film where, like, a battalion of 6 to 16-year-olds storm a house, and they capture a mother and like a 5-year-old girl who are hiding in the cupboard in this house, and they pull them out, and the 5-year-old girl is drug out into the hallway, and a bunch of other 5-year-olds stomp on her chest and stomach until she vomits and then drowns on her own blood. Well, like 10 feet away, her mother is being raped in the next room. And as this little girl drowns to death on her own blood, the mother is being raped, and then like a 7-year-old fucking child soldier goes into the room and shoots the mother in the fucking head while she's being raped to relieve her from her suffering, to put her out of her misery. Like, that is a horrifying thing to see. It's a horrifying thing to happen. It's a horrifying thing to even think about. But this film is so committed to realism that there is, even as you watch something that brutal and cruel and horrible, there's not a huge amount of emotion or dramatic stakes in that scene. Like, you see terrible things in this film, but they just happen, and it moves on to the point where it was hard for me to really get invested in it emotionally. And this is a real issue of child soldiers, not only in Africa, but around the world, of the use of child soldiers. But the way that it was treated was so matter of fact, was so this happened, this happens, this happens, this happens, that even if I was horrified in the moment, and I was creeped out in the moment, and I was disturbed in the moment, when the film ended, I didn't feel like I was any better than I was when the film started. It was completely the opposite of Last King of Scotland. I didn't feel like my mind had been expanded, or my emotional or center had been expanded. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't traumatized. I wasn't anything by this film. And it's such a shame because, as I've stated over and over and again, Abraham Adda, this 14-year-old fucking actor, gives one of the best performances I have ever seen in this film. And Idris Elba is no slouch. But the acting is pitch perfect in this film. It is without flaw. The score is wonderful, brilliant. The score is perfect for each moment. And even the direction and the writing, all of it is good. And, this episode has been longer than it should have been. Just because I can't figure out why I didn't love this film. I don't know what it is, honestly. All the individual pieces are there. But they just... There is not a coherent statement. And I don't even necessarily want a coherent statement in my films. There is not a coherent tone. There is not a bigger picture. There is not... I assume that you guys can appreciate how hard this is, just listening to how fucking scatterbrained I am right now. There is not something that blew me away in this film. I think that puts it most succinctly. Like, when I was watching Beasts of No Nation, I was repeatedly surprised. I was repeatedly enthralled and horrified. But by the time I got to the end of it, it was like I hadn't even watched the movie at all. It was like nothing had happened. It was like... I'll put it this way. By the time I got to the end of watching Beasts of No Nation, I felt like I had just read the Wikipedia article for child soldiers in Africa or whatever. It was as brutal and emotionally honest as it was. I felt like it played it safe somehow. I was not all that scared. I was not all that horrified. It just... Man, this review has gone on for too long. Just because I can't... I like this film, but it just didn't work. I'm sorry, this film did not work the way it should have. Now, having rambled and been incoherent for long enough, I feel like I need to sum this up. Alright? Should you watch Beasts of No Nation? I want to say yes, because some of the performances, some of the beats in it are absolutely goddamn fucking incredible. But as a film, is this an Oscar-worthy film? Is this going to endure? Like 5 years from now, are people going to be talking about this film? 10, 20, 30 years from now, are people going to be talking about this film? Absolutely not. I'm sorry, they're not. This film is half of what it should have been. And that is all the more depressing because every element for it to be great is present. The direction, the writing, the acting. They had everything they needed to make this an overwhelming masterpiece of cinema. And I don't even know how they did it, but somehow they failed spectacularly. And, just for the final time, I want to state that Abraham Adda, his performance in this film, it's hard, like, off the dome, it's hard for me to think of, like 9 performances that are better than his performance. And he's 14 years old. And Idris Elba gives a great performance in this as well. Although he's basically a supporting actor, a supporting character. But, as good as the parts are, the whole of this film, the totality of this film, are tragically not more than the sum of the parts. In fact, they're less. The parts are all great, but the film overall just does not work in the way that it should have. And it's sad. I feel sad saying that. I feel sad reporting that. But this is not as good as it should have been. And it doesn't work as well as it should have. And as I mentioned, you guys, if any of you have not seen the film Last King of Scotland, starring Forest Whitaker, absolutely go watch that, because obviously, like, I take an interest in Africa and so on. And before I watched Last King of Scotland, I knew who Idi Amin was. How can you not know who Idi Amin was? Like, even fucking Richard Pryor did a sketch about him, playing him. Idi Amin is like the stereotypical African dictator. So I knew who he was watching Last King of Scotland. Then I watched it, and Forest Whitaker, his performance was so transcendently good and perfect and heart-wrenching and terrifying. Last King of Scotland, for all its flaws, absolutely fucking blew me away. And I'm sorry, but Beasts of No Nation did not do that for me. It just was not... They didn't figure it out. I'm sorry. So definitely go watch Last King of Scotland if you want to see a great, horrible film about Africa and her struggles. But Beasts of No Nation was unfortunately a bit mediocre, a bit underperforming, a bit underdeveloped. And for that reason, I'm going to give Beasts of No Nation a rating of 3.5 out of 5. This has been Driving in the Dark. You can hit me up on Twitter at DITD Podcast. I'm available on SoundCloud and iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube. And if you don't know, now you know. Hashtag Idris Elba for James Bond. Forever. Yach.